Okay, thank you, Paul, for meeting me and taking time today. So why don't we get started? You can start a little bit about, who you are, your background, what you're doing now, if you want, and maybe a little bit about the path that you took to get into packaging engineering and development.
Sure. Yeah, so my name's Paul Marshall. I'm a global director of packaging and labeling for Zimmer Biomet. I have been with Zimmer Biomet for about 8 years, and I am located in Warsaw, Indiana. My path into packaging engineering was a interesting one, I guess. I wasn't a packet guy, where a lot of people when I was in school would be chemical engineers or mechanical engineers and then kind of fall into packaging that way. I actually graduated with a mechanical engineering degree, and I started my career as that and was doing a lot of contract work, actually working on packaging
Hmm.
as part of that, and found it really interesting. And so my younger sister at the time was going to Michigan State and had mentioned that there was a packaging school at Michigan State. And I was very curious, and then eventually pursued that and got another degree from Michigan State in packaging.
Oh,
And then
cool.
my career ever since has been in packaging, a variety of different fields before I landed on medical device.
Okay. Yeah. So, how long have you been in the medical device space and kind of what led you to that? Was that your end goal or was it just kind of like packaging, you kind of fell into it and discovered that you enjoyed it?
Yeah, I was in a lot of different disciplines prior to that. I was in aerospace, I was in retail, I was in semiconductor,
Hmm.
and eventually kind of fell into medical. And I've been doing medical for about 24 years or so. And once I kind of found my niche and where I really kind of enjoyed, I've stayed with it since.
That's awesome. So I kind of did a little bit of stalking you on LinkedIn. So I noticed that you said you're a passionate advocate for medical device packaging, focusing on providing innovative and compliant packaging solutions to drive patient safety. So would you say that's like really your main focus, compliant packaging and safety for patient use?
Yeah, I absolutely. Whoever wrote that was spot on, right? So, yeah, I absolutely agree with that. I feel like I'm an innovative risk taker, and I feel like that's a space where that's typically not um, not driven hard from an innovation perspective. Of course, everything that we do, any device that is made with a medical device company, patient safety is absolutely number one. But I feel
Hmm.
like innovation and delivering better packaging systems and solutions to enhance the user and user's experience and interacting, and helping facilitate the use of the device in which it's packed in is really kind of a main driver and focus for me.
Sure. So yes, of course, patient safety, compliance, usability. I hear a lot about making the package more user-friendly or enjoyable even. What about sustainability? Does that factor into, what you're doing day to day?
Yeah, we're a global company, and obviously, Europe is a lot more advanced in sustainability than we are, and really driving that from a global perspective.
Hmm.
Innovation in sustainability is certainly a piece of it, and we're not excluded from that in the medical device world. So we definitely have a focus on sustainability aspects of our packaging materials that we're using. It's a balance though. Implementing new materials or recycled materials is challenging, right? You have to have the right controls in place, the right approvals for regulatory bodies, etc. So a lot of work needs to go into that on our end to allow that to happen. And so Well, that's certainly a driver, and we're always looking for alternate materials or reprocessed recycled materials. And a lot of our suppliers are offering those solutions now. Our primary uh, um, aspect is really looking at reducing the use of our packaging, streamlining our packaging, making it smaller, thinning out materials where possible, really kind of reducing the use of the packaging materials versus the alternate materials at this point. Since alternate materials, the timelines associated with those are significantly longer, and so it's like a short-term, long-term type approach that we're taking.
Yeah, sure. I know, for med device pharma, materials are highly regulated, right? And what can be used and what can't be. So lightweighting seems to be like the way to go. Just in general, using less seems to be a safer route, I suppose you could say. And I'm assuming we kind of touched on this, but it really is a balance, right, of the sustainability, the regulations, patient safety. I'm sure all of it kind of gets factored, but like you said, the ultimate is patient safety and compliance.
Yeah, for sure.
So what do you see as like a big opportunity for innovation in medical packaging over the next decade? Is there any trends that you've kind of noticed that maybe the industry is heading a certain way?
Yeah, I think one thing that I think is packaging, at least in my experience with it, is has been a little bit sidebarred from direct uh, customer interaction.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
They usually MDMs are very good at collecting user needs and the voice of customer for products in which they're going to develop, but understanding that the packaging can play a role in that, and that getting that interaction with the end users, all the end users, right? So packaging has a lot of customers, both
Sure.
internal and external, right? All the way from manufacturing, actually from supply chain to manufacturing to distribution to the hospital stores to the nurses, the scrub and circulating nurses, and to a certain degree, doctors that interact with our packaging as ultimate end users of it.
Hmm.
So collecting the VOC from all those people will help kind of drive innovation and creative solutions that can be incorporated into the packaging to make a better experience and for all that's interact with it through its distribution chain.
Sure. That makes
I
that
feel
makes
like
sense.
that's probably the biggest gap in our
Okay.
industry is that disconnect between our users and what's actually being developed. Knowing that there's major considerations as far as the design that have to be met. It has to maintain sterility, has to survive distribution, it has to stay sterile for its shelf life, and it has to be aseptically transferred. And as long as you would kind of hit those general boxes, you could kind of check the box that the packaging has accomplished what it needed to. But I think that kind of misses a lot of the opportunity to add improvement for the usability, improvement for how it can help facilitate the use of a product. And so I think that's probably the biggest.
Yeah, it's interesting that, packaging is really evolving and maybe has been for a while, right? On just maybe it was once keeping something safe, and now there's so many more ways to use and to let the end user, whoever that may be, really interact with the packaging. So it's interesting.
Yeah.
So what do you think about like AI, machine learning, data analytics? Do you see that changing your career and your job in the future? Is it maybe it is already?
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, we're exploring and looking at a lot of AI models and solutions that can help our engineers focus on being engineers, right?
Hmm.
Taking some of the redundant tasks out, the and even complicated redundant tasks like label verifications and label content, for example, is a big improvement. Taking the human error factor out of that equation, and allowing our resources that we have to be more effective and focused on doing engineering and labeling engineering work. I think that AI is going to play a bigger role going forward than probably I even know at this point. Uh,
Yeah.
I know that, from a packaging engineering perspective, there's certainly some opportunity there. It's very niche, right? But, FEA analysis has been around for a long time, decades now. And really, I would see that there's a great opportunity for the evolution of those systems incorporating AI into those models to make them a little bit more predictive than they have been in the past. Yeah, packaging is a pretty hands-on type of a function, so I don't think that there's the necessary concern about it replacing a packaging engineer,
Okay.
but certainly the opportunity for it to complement.
Yes, and I agree, and I hope that's the case for all industry, really. It's a great tool. Let's just hope it doesn't replace any of us, huh?
Yes, exactly.
So you mentioned labeling a little when talking about, AI. What are some of the challenges in labeling that you're facing?
Um, there's always evolving changes, regulatory changes, and there's not really a lot of harmonization from a labeling perspective as you would see in packaging, right? Packaging is, for the most part, pretty aligned around, standard ISO documents that kind of drive what we need to do from a packaging perspective. But labeling is very country specific in a lot of
Mhm.
cases. There's different nuances, different symbologies. There's UDI, there's G10, there's these different interfaces, and it all comes together on labeling. And so understanding product requirements, regulatory requirements on labeling, and then complementing that with how labels are structured so that the content in those labels is intuitive to the end user, has the right information in the right locations. So there's a lot going on there, and we're really kind of hoping that some of the AI tools that we're evaluating are going to help us benefit. Because when you have so much information on labels and so many requirements coming from different sources, and you're looking at human review, human confirmation that the label is complete and compliant, it's a lot going on. And
Yeah.
so, and humans are, not 100% capable of finding all those things, especially when you're looking at 1,000 labels at a time. Are they
Yeah.
right? And they have to be all right. And if they're not all right, then we have problems. So, those are where I feel like AI, for example, will be a huge benefit for us to kind of streamline that, understand requirements, translate that to what has to be on the label, and then looking for that content on the label to make sure it's correct.
Okay. Do you think there's a strong future with the idea of digital labeling? That might be more on the pharma side, but I'm sure you've heard of some of these digital labels replacing, like the long paper pieces that we would have and just going all digital.
When you say digital, I guess, can you walk me through that a little bit just so I make sure I'm on the same page?
Yeah, so I've seen, at some shows it's like a little screen that has the information that, a user can access that way. And I actually don't even
Oh,
know exactly how it works, but um, just kind of replacing the paper. And it
okay.
might even be like a QR code or, just anything that's a little more interactive and sustainable.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. We haven't, or I haven't, really explored or know a lot about that. When you say digital, I was kind of assuming that, going to direct print on packaging, which we are looking at, getting rid of
Hmm.
the label, but not the
Okay.
content of the label. So yeah, so I mean, that's kind of our evolution at this point, is kind of looking at direct print, uh,
Okay.
but still print. Now, I think one of the challenges with that, at least from an MDM perspective, from my perspective, would be, how do we how do we do that where you would have to have the interface to read that content? If it's like a QR code or what have you, you would have to have the electronic ability
Yeah.
to read that. And at this point, we find that some of our customers can't even read more advanced, 2D barcodes. So, on our
Yeah.
labels, we'll have 2D barcodes. We'll also have linear barcodes. So we don't even have that standardization from reading, barcodes that have been out for a long time. But so going to that next quantum leap
Yeah.
seems like it might be a little far away for us at this point.
Yeah, and like you said, you don't know who's on the other end of that. What tools do they have? You said, even from an end user, it's like, do they have the capability to scan and read the information? If we don't know, then we probably have to provide it also, with direct print or a full label. So
Yeah,
definitely some work to do in that space.
that's similar to like the patient implant cards that go in our implants, right? It's requirement driven out of Europe, where you have a card that essentially has your implant information on them. That could very easily be automated and made electronic, but that end user would have to have the ability to access that information electronically, and
Hmm.
fortunately, not everyone has that ability at this point, so we're
Yep.
stuck with paper.
Yeah. So true. So, what has changed maybe the most in your industry over the last 20 years? And anything that you find, very surprising or we'll say shocking?
Yeah, I think the biggest changes have really been, the regulations and requirements associated um, with packaging and labeling. That they have become much more stringent. Um, in terms of requirements to complete a DHF. Just recently in the last couple of years, user validations have become a requirement, which I think is great. It's probably overdue and was a best practice before it was a requirement, but with the EU MDR, there's a lot more focus and attention to labeling and packaging than have been in the past. Um, and so there's a lot more scrutiny on the testing and support data that you have to support your packaging systems, your labeling. So I think that that's probably the biggest change I've seen, surprisingly. I would have liked to seen more significant changes in terms of testing.
Hmm.
A lot of our testing is a little dated, right?
Okay.
And some of the test methods that we have been around for a long time, and I'm not suggesting they're not good methods, but with the rapid expansion of innovation and technology, I would have expected some kind of commensurate advance in testing that really
Okay.
have seen to a large degree. So I think that's probably what I've kind of found surprising is that, testing hasn't kept pace with
Hmm.
technological or even AI type, development that would maybe enable stuff that wasn't possible 20 years to happen.
And do you think that's more industry wide, right? You're saying
Yeah.
as far as
Well,
testing limitations or
yeah, I mean, yes. So I think that's just the medical device community and at least the methods that are used within our scope. Uh,
okay.
that's kind of what I'm suggesting there. Again, AI into predictive tools for, you know, vibration testing, right? Which is
Hmm.
a bit more of a well, it's certainly dynamic, but it's an understood, why do we need to do that now if we have AI tools that could replicate that to probably a pretty significant degree. Those type of things,
Okay.
I feel like there's opportunity there for for tools like that to come around to maybe simplify that. even the cost of entry into that type of testing. You
Hmm.
know, vibration tables are very expensive and take up a big footprint and time, right? So, you know, things like that.
Okay, yeah. Well, hopefully, we do another interview in a few years, there'll be some movement in that category.
Yeah.
Um, so wrapping up, Paul, what do you think, if you want to give any advice to young engineers interested in entering the medical device field or medical device packaging, what kind of advice do you have?
Yeah, for a new person coming right out of school, I think the biggest two things I would give them is, you know, don't don't be afraid to ask questions or challenge the status quo. A lot of times things are done because they've always been done that way. And when you come in, your advantages is that you're bringing a new perspective and asking challenging questions like, why do we do that? Or have we ever considered doing this? And you know, maybe it's a learning opportunity for you, or maybe it's a retrospective consideration from, you know, your new employer on why don't we do it that way, or maybe that would be
Yeah.
better. And then also, you know, especially younger people are coming out with a lot more technical background from a um, you know, that can be leveraged too. You know, tools that you grew up with or are familiar with may have application, and then finding those synergies where that's a proposal that you could make and at least get the wheels of thought turning, right? I
Yeah.
would also say uh, it's very important to kind of get involved with the community, you know, build a network amongst peers and other MDM companies. A lot of times those peer groups can be very powerful and can kind of persuade auditing bodies or build um, networked solutions and harmonized approaches to things um, to kind of build and shape the auditing world, you know, third parties in particular, right?
Hmm.
So I think building and leveraging networks and even bouncing things off of peers in the same group as much as possible really kind of builds a foundation for future success. And then I'd also say, you know, you know, don't be afraid to fail in development. That's just inherent in development, is that failure is part of that equation. It's challenging in our industry because, you know, we're at the last stop before a product is launched. So failure is not well received when you're going to delay a product launch. But
Sure.
we also need to be able to fail, right? Because that's how we learn. That's how we grow. That's how we hopefully don't fail in the future and become better either through processes that we take, mitigations, better solutions, what have you. But I think that that builds a better, stronger
Hmm.
function and a better, well-rounded engineer. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. And I will comment that you mentioned building a network or, bouncing ideas and a community. And I've noticed that it's pretty strong in the medical device manufacturing space. Just
Yeah.
going to industry events and meeting people, it's cool to see the collaboration. So,
Yeah.
yeah, it's interesting. Well,
Yeah.
thank
Strong
you.
man.
Thank you for your time.
Yeah. My pleasure. Yeah. It was great. Great talking to you.